seated. Lieutenant Governor, I want to first start by saying good morning to the wonderful people of the U.S. Virgin Islands. On January 5th, Lieutenant Governor Potter and I assumed office in this wonderful government, in this wonderful community. On January 18th, we were asked and had a meeting with the officials of Hess Corporation having to do with the shuttered oil refinery on the island of St. Croix. Our purpose, or I believe our intent in this meeting, was to get a good handle on what Hess's plans were for this shuttered refinery. December 2014, the 30th legislature, and in its wisdom, voted to reject a proposed operating agreement between the then ADR and Avenza. At the meeting in January, my interest and the Lieutenant Governor's interest was how would Hess settle its claims with the government and the people of the Virgin Islands. The claims at the time resulted in some $40 million for a settlement on the environmental issues, approximately $14 million for suspended pilots, and then some percentage that should occur after a sale as a commission. As you all know, Hess advised us that they had some timelines and that if a sale could not go through, they anticipated that even the very $40 million owed to the government of the Virgin Islands, they would use to shutter the refinery. The meeting came to a rapid close, and the following day, on January the 19th, I appeared before the people of the Virgin Islands, advised them of the tenets of the meeting, and directed the Attorney General of the Virgin Islands to begin foreclosure proceedings of the secured lien that the government held on the property at Estate Hope. On several occasions, persons and members of the legislature encouraged me as governor to meet with persons who had some interest in purchasing the South Shore refinery. As many of you know, I refused to engage in the bartering of the sale of the refinery and made clear that that is a responsibility of the Hess Corporation to find a buyer, to make a decision about the plan, and to be able to tell the people of the Virgin Islands how it would resolve its financial obligations to the territory and the environmental impacts to the island. In August of 2015, I received a phone call from one of the attorneys representing Hess Corporation, advising me that Hess had in fact identified a buyer and wanted to set a meeting with me to introduce that buyer to me. On September 8th, with members of my cabinet and representatives of the government, we had that meeting in New York City, where Hess Corporation introduced us to a group of individuals, business persons known as ArcLight. The Hess company detailed what the tenets of the sale would be, and again restated what resolutions of the financial obligations would occur following the sale. As I reported to the people of the Virgin Islands following that meeting, Hess advised that the sale transaction was valued at $190 million. The government of the Virgin Islands could expect to receive $40 million under its secured lien, and the government could then go off to the bankruptcy court. They would be doing a bankruptcy sale. The government could go off to the bankruptcy court and fight for its $14 million of the pilot that was suspended, its additional 14 of the pilot that became due in October, and at that time, given the 190, the 35 million that would have been due the people of the Virgin Islands for its commission. I advised the folks at Avenza that they still, at Hess Oil, that they still had not risen to the occasion, that they had not arrived at a place where the government of the Virgin Islands would be willing to do business with them. And so on September 14th, the Attorney General of the Virgin Islands filed a suit in the Superior Court of the Virgin Islands alleging breach of Hess's contractual obligations to operate a refinery facility to provide jobs and economic inducements to the territory until the year 2022. I will leave the numbers to the pundits, but I'm told that the media ascribed that the minimus of that suit was about $1.5 billion on behalf of the territory. Shortly thereafter, on September 15th, Hess filed a Chapter 11 petition for the sale of the storage facility and cloaked to protect Provenza, its partners both PDVSA and Hess Oil, in the suit. Filed motion in the federal court seeking that the suit filed by the Attorney General should be moved and consolidated with the bankruptcy proceedings. In addition, while all of these issues were taking place, the legislature of the Virgin Islands, since January, did accede to our request for starting a suit, to have a civil suit against Hess and its partners, and appropriated $1 million for that transaction. In the pendency of all of these issues, the government decided that it would seek the assistance of a legal team that could actually provide some financing for a civil suit against Hess Oil. There's no question why we would do that, because in a suit against such a corporation, the question is who have more dimes in their pocket. I would like to commend my Attorney General, Mr. Claude Walker, for bringing to us the law firm of Cohen and Milsey, whose point person, attorney Linda Singer, is here, that was able to provide the resources, but more importantly, the capacity, the knowledge, bankruptcy counsel, to join the government's team to take on these issues, which are wide-ranging. The government put together a transaction team, actually two teams, a litigation team and a transaction team. One to begin the discussion of an operating agreement, and one to deal with the managing of the litigation against Hess Oil. The legal team was headed by our Attorney General, my Chief Legal Counsel, Emile Henderson, Attorney Peter Hebert, Attorney Linda Singer, my good friend, Attorney Joe Holt, and Commissioner Val Collins. We also, in the transaction side, brought some members of the financial team, and we hired the firm of Gaffney, Klein and Associates, who is an energy consultant and economist in the field of energy, so that we could clearly understand what are the tenets and changes that have been occurring in the energy industry globally, and what does the asset on St. Croix mean to the ever-changing climate in the energy industry, and how could the people of the Virgin Islands well position itself to articulate and negotiate an effective operating agreement. In this process, the authorized bidders by the bankruptcy court was ArcLight Capital and Buckeye. I had two meetings individually with my team, where I was present, with both companies. And I must commend the folks at ArcLight, who ultimately decided that they would be the partners in which the government of the Virgin Islands wished to do business with, because ArcLight did business smart, did business well. ArcLight brought real partners to the table, and ArcLight isn't broke by any means. I think after this session, we're going to ask you to finance some of our debt. It's really a $15 billion funded entity, owning a tremendous amount of assets in storage and terminal facilities. But ArcLight realized in its conversations with the government that we had an interest beyond just a storage and terminal facility. And so ArcLight, headed by Jake Earhart, who's here, And one of his partners, Evan Schwartz, that participated in this process, brought real players to the table. They brought Sinopec, the largest oil refiner on the planet. Sheldon Pang is here representing them. Sinopec owns 35 oil refineries globally and other offshoots of oil production in the business, and buys tremendous amount of its oil from the Latin American countries. It is a firm out of China. They also brought to the table a commodities broker, Freepoint LLC, and Daniel Hedges here representing them, and really put together a presentation to the government on how we will not only use the storage capacity that exists on the South Shore, but how we're going to be able to look at the entire South Shore area and pursue other business elements and opportunities. So really very quickly, and upon the selection of ArcLight as a partner with the government, there's 13 million barrels of capacity for storage at the St. Croix site immediately. The total capacity of storage is 32 million barrels. At the selection in Miami, at our Miami meeting, and the government's intention to do business with ArcLight, Sinopec signed a 10-year agreement with ArcLight to take 10 of the 13 million barrels of storage capacity immediately. Freepoint immediately followed and took 2 million more barrels of that immediate capacity. So out of the 13 million barrels that exist today, 12 million is gone. This means that ArcLight is going to be investing over $125 million in CapEx improvements to get an immediate other 13 million barrels of capacity available, and have clients for those capacity and begin the process of expanding its capacity facilities there. This morning can only be described as really two things happening. In January, I announced that the people of the Virgin Islands had reached the end of its line with the Hess company, that we were in divorce proceedings, that we had won the House, and we wanted to know when Hess would leave, and that the divorce would be amicable or it would be contentious, but a divorce it would be. Jeannot Hess individually filed a civil suit against the government of the Virgin Islands, contending that the government of the Virgin Islands owed it $184 million in tax refund claims, and PDVSA, as his partner, has filed a similar suit saying that we owe them the same for a total of $368 million. Out of the New York meeting, I asked the representatives of PDVSA that I would be very interested in meeting with the president of the country of Venezuela to begin to discuss some of these issues, because we obviously want some level of a global settlement. As you know, the government of Venezuela is in the midst of an election. Attorney Peter Hebert contacted the State Department, and I was cleared to begin to engage with the government of Venezuela on issues relating to its business on St. Croix. On Tuesday, I believe that was November the 9th or 10th, the former Venezuelan ambassador to the United States flew into St. Croix and had a 2-hour session with me in Government House. We began to talk about a lot of long-ranging issues, but specifically this issue of the tax claim that PDVSA has filed. We had a subsequent meeting with other representatives of PDVSA here on St. Thomas, and I'm pleased to inform the people of the Virgin Islands that as part of a global settlement, Hess Oil has signed to retract and drop its tax refund claim against the Virgin Islands in the amount of $184 million, And after the December 6th election in Venezuela, we are expecting and have been advised that the government of Venezuela will drop its tax claim against the government of the Virgin Islands as well. In consideration of they removing those tax claims, the government of the Virgin Islands will drop its civil suit against the companies. Now, on to the closing, on to the resolution. As part of the sale transaction with ArcLight, I'm very pleased to have ArcLight as a new partner, and we're going to have some of the folks speak to you. The government's value of settlement and going forward, so I'm going to combine all of it. The government's take out of this transaction is valued at a little bit over $800 million. Immediately, the government will receive upon the closing approximately $220 million in cash. There will be another $9 million set aside for some pending litigation between the former council that represented the government on the environmental issues. And in this entire process, I learned that Venezuela is one of the larger exports of bitumen, what we call it tar, a very significant commodity for paving streets and roads. And you know, we have that big issue in the Virgin Islands. And so our new partner, ArcLight, is putting another $6 million on the table that will build a bitumen facility at the Jovensa site, which allows the government of the Virgin Islands, will be done in the name of the government of the Virgin Islands, allow the government to import at least 100,000 barrels of bitumen to provide to our paving companies for construction of roads in the territory. Now this is important because currently our paving entities pay about $110 per barrel to land that commodity in the U.S. Virgin Islands. This facility will allow us to land it around $34. So we thank ArcLight for taking the responsibility for that part. In addition, there's another $30 million that will be set aside for the cleanup of the Jovensa site. Our operating agreement calls for a 2-year assessment by ArcLight and its partner to determine what provisions of the plant will be utilized and what provisions will not be utilized are required to be dismantled and removed from the territory. ArcLight will obviously sell those metals and scrap and will be entitled to keep the first $5 million of the proceeds from the dismantling, and after $5 million, the government of the Virgin Islands will share 50% of the proceeds of anything after that. The Hess Corporation is required to have a wraparound insurance policy that if in the dismantling we find some unexpected contaminations or anything of that nature, that we will be able to draw from that pool, that policy, for the continued cleanup of the facility. The ArcLight will also provide up to $15 million worth of electricity to Hess for the continuation of the pumping of the groundwater cleanup process that is now ongoing at the site for its continued cleanup. I want to commend Commissioner Don Henry from the Department of Planning and Natural Resources and our partner, the Regional Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, Ms. Judith Ng, who has been working closely with the government of the Virgin Islands as we get through the environmental issues concerning the plant. ArcLight is also paying $90 million into the bankruptcy to make sure it reimburses the creditors, and Hess parent company, Hess Oil, has assumed the $55 million of obligations of the pension program of the employees that retired from Jovensa, so that they can be assured and confident that there will be no disruption in their retirement benefits coming to them and they being